Hello and welcome once again to another episode of 177 Nations of Tasmania. Now, Hong Kong has a very different history to most of the rest of China and is listed in Australia's census as a separate country of birth, distinct from the People's Republic of China. The first language of much of the population is Cantonese, and many Hong Kongers have been raised and schooled in a hybrid English-Chinese system. Anthony, who's my guest for this episode, is one such, and his family came to Tasmania in the 90s, around the time Hong Kong was being handed from British to Chinese rule. And they essentially came for reasons of faith, as you will hear more about. And although Anthony went to high school in Tasmania and has spent much of his life here, he still retains a good part of his Chinese cultural identity. And I thought it would be interesting to talk to him from the perspective of someone who understands both cultures and has experienced both during a period in Tasmania's migrant history when the Chinese migrant and student population here has risen exponentially.
So my family came to Tasmania in 1997, straight from Hong Kong. A very different place than Hobart. The reason we came was because of our religious belief. And we had a Buddhist teacher who had been residing in Hobart since 1989. And the Buddhist teacher convinced us to come over and be part of the religion and learn the religion in closer proximity. That helps us with understanding religion, and that's primarily my parents' decision to come over here. Yeah, and that's why we came.
And how did they hear about, or how did they know about this guy in Tasmania?
They met the Buddhist teacher back in Hong Kong or in China. There was like a session of, treating illnesses with the Buddhist way back in 1980. Well, it's near the end of the 80s. And also back then in China, there was a lot of promotion about different healing methods. Okay. Not necessarily Buddhist. Perhaps Buddhism back then was a little bit forbidden, really. Religion is, but there was a big exploration into kind of miraculous way or non-traditional way of healing, because I think back then there was a big focus on looking for something beyond our current understanding. Yeah, but I mean, all along the way in human history, we always want to understand more than what we really understand on that surface level, and we'll try to increase our understanding of the nature. And but back then there was like a huge focus on like this non-conventional way of healing and also the unexplained phenomena in the nature, that kind of thing.
That's interesting that something like that would happen in or trigger someone or appeal to someone in Hong Kong where nature is maybe not so close to you.
Yeah, surprisingly, if we talk about nature, Hong Kong does actually have big, well, we don't call that national parks, but equivalent to national parks in Hong Kong.
Like nature reserves.
Yes. So there are actually a lot of walking tracks around Hong Kong because Hong Kong in a way is similar to Hobart. It's very hilly, very terraneous, and you can see most of the population actually lives around the waterfront or the coastal area. And that's why land is so much in shortage. You see a lot of the buildings, even skyscrapers, or we don't call them skyscrapers in Hong Kong, but they're also about like 20-something floors high, but they're actually built on like the side of the hill, which is bizarre, Yeah. Even sometimes when I go back looking at them, it looks bizarre. It's like, imagine you have a 20-story building on the side of Mount Stewart or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen pictures of all the high-rises sort of settled in this kind of like an amphitheater almost.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So, in that way, I think Hobart has a tendency of building suburbs around the Derwent, and also the coastal area. Same for Hong Kong.
Yeah. Okay.
But again, as I said, the nature is actually quite unique in Hong Kong. I mean, they have hexagonal rock formation somewhere in the islands, and there are actually hundreds, I think about 90 something or hundreds of islands around Hong Kong as well, which is sparsely or not populated at all.
So when you came to Australia, you were 12?
10.
10. Okay, so pretty young. What do you remember about your sort of first times or what are your first memories of Tasmania?
My first memory was Tasmania was cooler, obviously, a lot cooler, a lot slower in terms of pace of life. And if we want to buy something, say a pair of sneakers, it's a bit hard because, especially back then.
How was it adjusting to school at that time? In Hong Kong, were you schooled in English or Chinese or both?
I went to a English kindergarten, mainly English speaking, but we also have Chinese language. Then I went to a mainly Chinese language primary school, but we also they also taught English over there. So, I mean, English and Chinese kind of always exist in either way, but sometimes it's like whether you have English as the main language or the Chinese as the main language. Yeah.
When you arrived, were you reasonably okay with the language, or did it take time to adjust to Australian English?
I think for me it's hard because I'm very shy and I'm very, very slowly. I adapt to a new environment very, very slowly.
Okay.
Yeah. So to a new school, to a new society, which is a terrible thing. I really envy people that could, just mix in right away, that kind of thing. And being sociable and have a social circle makes life a lot more easier and more comfortable, honestly. Yeah. So language-wise, I can speak, but to gain confidence took me a long, long time. Yeah, just to speak like really fluently and be able to express myself, tell a joke. That kind of is a lot of slow steps for me. Yeah. I wish I could, bunch it up and just master it right away. But,
What do you think was the most challenging thing for you to adjust to or to get used to?
I think being a shy person is to slowly change my first instinct to avoid people and to put trust into other people. Yeah. And trust people that they have good intentions in their heart and they naturally are there to help you.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. And I guess also back in the late 90s, I guess that you were at school, there wouldn't have been so many Asian people at school.
Surprisingly, I went to Taruna.
Okay.
Taruna High School. And I think we had about 32 international students during my years there. Maybe there was an odd Norwegian student, but otherwise they're all Asians. Thai, China. During my years in Hutchins, I think we also had about 30 Asian students over there.
And was it easy to mix with other students?
I do notice the Asian students kind of tends to group together themselves. You have one or two odd ones that are really good at, speaking like the locals, or they can mimic the locals, how the Australians speak, and they can mix in very well, make jokes and have fun. I envy that. Yeah. Again, I think it's up to people to attempt to break that ice and cross that kind of threshold of being you or us and you, you people, our people, that kind of thing. Yeah. And it's important to attempt it, I think, because I think once you do it a few times, you get a lot more comfortable and it makes a huge difference to your experience in, say, a new place. And say, for example, for a local like me, because I'm not international students from the get-go, it does wonder for the long run, because ultimately I want to, a person like me will want to immerse in the local culture and get to know people, whereas international students, they want to take an authentic full experience back to their country. You don't want to go spend like $20,000 or $10,000 per year at school, then you go back and barely learn about the culture. Yeah, I think, which is a shame if that happens.
Yeah. What did you do after you finished high school?
So after grade 12, I started working at my family's dental practice, and that was from 2005 until pretty much, you can say I'm still working there, but from last year onwards, since I enrolled in university, didn't have much time. So that's what I done. Last year at the end of during the summer holidays, I applied for a job. I applied for jobs so that I could, kind of further my understanding of my university studies. So I applied for jobs in the geology mining industry. Yeah, I got a job, which was very interesting. Bit hard for me physically, very physically demanding, and you work in very remote places. And then afterwards, the border opening in mid-December. Gradually, some of our staff got infected as well, and they had to quarantine, and I have to come back. Yeah, and I also work for my a friend's restaurant as well.
At the time you came to Tasmania and sort of in the 90s, was there much of a Chinese community around at the time?
Not much, really. Yeah, not many Chinese were around. I think when I go onto the street, probably even until about 8-9 years ago, when I see a Chinese person on the street, my eyes would just I just get surprised. I'll be like, wow, we have a nation. Yeah. It's not very often you feel like you see many Asians around, especially in town. Maybe a lot more in Sandy Bay. There's a Chinese community that's in North Hobart. I think back then they had a few spas events happening, but not much happened. Yeah, but I think about 10 years ago, things got a lot more, with the Chinese population a lot larger than before. And I think the awareness of different cultures, and also the effort to drive more events in Hobart, I do notice a lot more events, even hosted by our Buddhist community or other Chinese communities. Yeah, so there was like a plethora of Chinese communities doing events. So then add them together, you have a lot. Yeah, which is kind of nice, but also hectic. Yeah, I'm very involved in the Buddhist community. In the last 20 odd years, we have done a lot of events. So like the Buddha birthday, which is a big one on the Buddhist calendar every year. And we had done the Christmas pageant every year. We will have the dragon dance and the lion dance, and also some cultural costumes in the parade. We have the Chinese New Year celebration. So we'll go to other Chinese communities events to perform the lion dance or the dragon dance, and then we have our own like dinner as well with our friends. We used to have the Mid-Autumn Festival celebration as well. So you can see that our calendar would be pretty full during the year. We also have a meditation class as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you find that local people get involved with this as well, or show interest?
Yes, to some degree. Yes, yes. I think our focus would be more on events and cultural promotion. So getting people to know the Chinese culture, because for our Buddhist tradition is very much involved in the Chinese culture side of things. It's very integrated. So the religious and the culture. So we just have like Chinese lion dance and dragon dance in a way to promote the Chinese culture side of things. Yeah. But which back then was, still to this day, sometimes we meet with some young people on the street or on the flights, and they say they have seen our lion dance or dragon dance when they were in the primary school years, which is quite surprising and nice.
Because I guess that especially in recent years, that in Australia there's, how to put it, maybe a mix of misunderstanding and suspicion of Chinese. It's probably more related to the Chinese government. So it's important to remind people that there are so many more aspects to Chinese culture.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, in the last 5 or 7, 8 years, we do notice a lot more animosity, and particularly targeting the Chinese. Whereas before that, maybe you can get egged at some odd times just because people have nothing to do, or they just want to vent their anger or frustration. But now, in the last 7 years or 8 years, it's very targeted towards the Chinese. Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes you can't tell between a Chinese, a Japanese, or Korean. So everyone gets a bit.
Yeah, or Malaysian or Thai, Vietnamese. Some locals have no idea, but they shouldn't be targeting anyone. Anyway.
Yes. I remember 2002, it was the World Cup at the Korea-Japan World Cup. And we came back, got off the bus in town, and some guy just yelled at us like, Korea, and we were like, we are not Koreans. But Korea did very well. South Korea did very well at that tournament.
Yeah. So he was saying it is a good thing?
I think so, yeah. But we were just like, we are not Koreans.
Yeah. At the moment, so what sort of activities are you involved with the Buddhist community here?
A lot with the line dance currently. I mean, with the pandemic, that means we have a lot of events and activities cancelled. For the last 2 years, there were no Christmas pageants in Hobart. Last year, we did a few Christmas party, which is a lot smaller in scale in Greater Hobart, like in Brighton or Bridgewater. In the past, we had Oatlands, we had New Norfolk, Hobart, and Bridgewater. Yeah. So four Christmas parades in 1 month or 2 months.
Yeah. So you're getting all over the place.
Yes, it gets very busy.
And how is it received in somewhere like Oatlands or Bridgewater?
They're very welcoming, actually. The last time we went, which was last Christmas, some mother saw us walking by and she said, "Oh, you have the line dancers coming," talking to her kids and saying, "Oh, you really like them? Do you remember?" And yeah. So then we did a performance. So I think we're very well received. Oatlands is a unique place. It's part of the Southern Midlands Council area, and we have a large temple planned to be built over there at Campania. Have you seen the big statues over there?
I don't think I haven't been to Campania for a while. I don't think
they've been there since 2016.
Yeah, I've seen pictures.
Yeah. So you can drive by when you have time. Tichy Road, you'll see them. Yeah, 5 meters tall stone lions and 7 meters tall, the 4 heavenly deva. Yeah, they're kind of like the statues usually in front of a temple.
And what's the significance of those statues actually?
Oh, they're more like the protectors. The protectors, yeah. So the main temple complex usually happens after them.
How have you got to know locals, I guess?
I guess sometimes you have to defeat your own instinct. Like sometimes you want to be lazy, but you tell yourself you have to get yourself organized. Otherwise you'll be spending a lot of time stuck doing nothing. And that's how you commit to things. Like sometimes I would be like, in the past few years when I'm engaged with work, sometimes busy, sometimes not so busy, I'll enroll myself into some courses. You can be easy, it could be hard, but having something like on the horizon, you have time, you have deadlines and things, it drives you to commit to it and get a qualification or something. Yeah. So I think that's the same for meeting people, like sit next to people that you don't know. if you feel like that person is hostile, then probably not sit next to him. But if you feel like they are semi-friendly, yeah, go ahead, sit next to them and just start the conversation. Doesn't have to be very deep, just say hi. And what I found was after a few classes, you gradually know each other a little bit more. You don't have to be like the best friend kind of relationship, but you just get to know them and see how it goes, exchange Instagram. It's funny. I do notice recently people, instead of exchanging Facebook, they will be exchanging Instagram. Not sure why. And recently I have a group project that actually makes people know each other a lot better as well. Yeah, and you see people in full view in a way, like the work commitment and the work ethics. And
group project, do you mean group project for work or for study?
For study.
Yeah. Because often at uni, you've got to do these.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to learn how to work with people.
Yeah, but in my experience of teaching at the uni, I found often that can be quite challenging for Chinese students in particular, because it's not something that they've learnt or experienced in their education.
Yes, I think it's hard. Like I have recently, a friend interviewed me for her IT project. Like that's her assignment. The whole group is Chinese people, and they can speak Chinese amongst them. They can speak Chinese with me. And I think that unfortunately it takes a bit away from the Australian learning experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best learning experience is throwing yourself into somewhere unknown.
Yeah.
So meeting people that you don't know how they will react, or throw yourself in a place that you don't know how yourself will react. And that way you'll learn something surprising about yourself.
Yeah, I think you've got to be a bit uncomfortable sometimes, because if you're not uncomfortable or out of your comfort zone, you don't really learn anything new.
Yes, like you'll be doing your own routine all the time, the same routine. Yeah. It's much easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely. And would it be fair to say that generally Chinese culture or Chinese tend to be more introspective and a little more introverted? Some of that group work can often be quite challenging.
Maybe I cannot say it for all Chinese because I've been here for so long. I'm a hybrid, or I'm a different one already. I think the challenge comes from the fact that when you're faced with someone who you have not break the ice with, when you still have that kind of veil in between you and them, when you have a you and them, it's very hard. It takes effort to break that wall, and it takes time to know how to speak with the other group in a meaningful way. So that's what make going to a new place hard. You have to learn the way of speaking, which is huge, which is one of the biggest issue. Communication and expectation is a big thing. They could be a totally normal law-abiding citizen in their own home country, but if they come to Australia, people will be saying you're not doing the right thing because there's some subtle differences, and that little differences could lead to big issues sometimes. So I think maybe it's natural that the Chinese people would want to mingle around their own people, although I think that defeats the purpose of coming to Australia. I think in East Asia, unfortunately, we do have those countries views the Southeast Asia as less developed. We do have a lot of domestic helpers in Hong Kong. They're from Philippines, from Indonesia, and some from Thailand. When you have an employer and employee relationship there, you tend to be like, oh, we are the high class, that kind of thing. Yeah. And you come from the poorer country and that kind of thing. Yeah. But again, I think it's very important to all people around the world to know that there are all sorts of people around each country and each society, you have very rich, very literate, very educated people in Philippines or Indonesia. Same as from Hong Kong and China. And even in Hong Kong, you have a lot of beggars on the street, and you have people struggling every day. Their whole living space is just, the size of your bed. And that's everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, because I guess you have the issue in Hong Kong of it's being very densely populated, so livable space is at a premium.
Yes. So some people's whole living space is the size of your toilet, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is, or just the size of your bed. And those are illegal accommodations because it's unsafe. It's against the fire code, I think.
Yeah.
But sometimes people just don't have any choice. And they're not cheap either.
Yeah, because I imagine real estate in Hong Kong is pretty expensive.
Yeah, there was American, I think, told his friend in Hong Kong, he explained to his fellow Americans, say you put $100 American bill on the ground, that piece of the space occupied by that $100 US note worth more than that $100 bill.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's Hong Kong.
So having spent a fair bit of time in both places, what do you think are some of the main cultural differences between here and Hong Kong?
There's so many. Say, for example, as a Hong Konger, we do have very limited trust on people. Okay. I think that is same for a lot of the metropolitan cities. Say if you go to New York, you'll be naturally very suspicious of people. You get pickpocketed very easily. You get scammed or you get tricked very easily. Sometimes people may just want to get a few dollars out of you, that kind of thing. So you become very suspicious naturally. Even in the last many years, or even now, sometimes I do have that instinct of being very guarded, which is hard. You live in fear. What I do notice about Hobartians, or even say if you go to Melbourne or Sydney, they are noticeably more trustful of people. They would smile at you. They would assume that you're not tricking them, and they would say if you buy something, they would say, even if you return something, they would just say they assume you are doing it out of honesty, and they will refund or return or exchange your product, no problem. Yeah, which is a good thing, I think. In the past few hundred years, the political center or the capital of the country is in the north, in Beijing. So when you have people around the political center, people tend to have a different way of doing things and a different view of the world than the people very far from the capital or the political center. So Hong Kong people have a very different view of the world to the people in, say, on the East Coast, on the Northeast, on the South, or the Northwest, or the Beijing.
So what is it that might distinguish Hong Kong from other places, like maybe about the people? Is there anything particularly distinctive?
Hong Kong people, there's so many of them. I'll say we view the world in a more from our own lens, from our own glasses. We will view the world as in like we're happy to work. We're happy to work hard, very very hard, like a lot of the Hong Kong people do. But there are certain ways that allows us to perform at that level. If things doesn't go right, it's very hard to satisfy that. Even no matter how hardworking you are, it just doesn't happen. I do think that sometimes it takes a person to go to another place to see the world in a different way. And I myself, because during my work, sometimes it gets really boring. In the past, I would read a lot of like Time magazine or Economist or different things on the internet, since internet becomes so rich of resources. Of course, you have to be careful. You have to be careful of what you're reading. Say, for example, from when I was in Hong Kong, I was kind of being bullied sometimes. You have to be really street smart sometimes in Hong Kong. And I was not a street smart person at all. So you get bullied a little bit, get called names. Calling names is a big thing in Hong Kong. And sometimes the nicknames are half funny and half insulting.
Yeah.
More insulting than funny, usually. And once you do something silly, you get remembered for that, you know.
Yeah.
But when I was in primary school or kindergarten, I think you just can't remember. You just kind of just go out there and make friends. But once you become a bit more self-conscious, like myself, stepping into my teenage years and my 20s and my 30s, for me, it's my teenage years that was so self-conscious, which really does not help at all. But I think at the end of the day, I've been recently keep reminding myself, like, it's because I'm still shy. Sometimes you still, like, you have this self-conscious thing going on, like, oh, how would people think about me, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, you have to remember that other people would actually think about themselves more than about you. So they don't have time to think about you. So you might look silly or whatever, but in fact, you are the person that think about yourself most. So try not to think about yourself, but try to think of the situation and think about the others. And for myself, in the 20s and my 30s, I try to break that very extreme shyness, which kind of helps a little bit now, I would say. Being in my 30s, I would say recently I'll be like taking it slow. You know, most of the time, say at class, remember you're there to learn. So spend most of the time learning, demonstrate yourself, demonstrate to others that you are serious about studying, you're a hard worker, you're not there to muck around, but have some chit chat with some people. You know, you don't have to go deep. Say something about your past. Like, I went to that school, you know, I've been playing with sport with, you know, people from your school. You know, I've been around this area and I saw something funny, you know, that kind of stories would break the ice a lot easier.
If you were giving advice to someone from Hong Kong who might be thinking, or China, wherever, who might be thinking to come and settle in Tasmania, what do you think are the most important things that they should know about Tasmania?
If they are settling in Hobart or Tasmania, I think is to readily discard some of the old presumptions, say for their career and how people do things and how people talk and communicate. Be ready to... People actually loves, even me as a Chinese person or Hong Konger, a former Hong Konger, like to see people put in the effort to merge or immerse themselves in a culture, because effort means something nice would come up. But if you don't put in the effort, very rarely you have something nice will come up. Yeah. So I think it's very important to put in the time and effort to learn the local customs and chat with people. You know, you go to a few music festival, not necessarily get yourself drunk and crazy, but you know, do something like that. Get yourself involved with local things. If you're a guy, try to get an Australian girlfriend or something. If you're a girl, try to get an Australian boyfriend or something. That will make a lot of difference in knowing the culture. Yeah, for sure. But easier said than done, probably. Yeah. I do notice a lot more cross-culture couples recently, though. On the streets. Maybe it's a good thing. In a way, some parents may not approve it. Right. Or maybe they do. But in Melbourne or Sydney, I think that will be a very daily occurrence. It's nothing surprising at all. But in Hobart, it's a bit rare still. Yeah, well, as you said, it's only fairly recently that we've got last 20 years, we've got a sizable Chinese population. And even then, it's much smaller, as not in just in numbers, but as a proportion compared to Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, any of the capitals. Yeah, I think some of the Chinese students would be thinking like, if things work out, I'll stay here. If things work out in a way that I got my PR, permanent residency, then I'll just move to Sydney or Melbourne or Queensland, a bit more warmer. But then if things doesn't work out, they may go back to China, that kind of thing. The trajectory is long and is hard to predict sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think getting yourself involved in some way, like some society, and surround yourself with the local culture is the quickest, with local people is the quickest way to learn.
Yeah, I think that's really important for longevity of settlement in Tasmania more than you can stay in Sydney, Melbourne and stay within your community, the Chinese community or whatever. It's not just Chinese. Many ethnic communities, they're big enough in the cities where you can have that support network.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's about learning new things. You come to Australia and learn, and you make yourself more capable. Yeah. English is still a very important language around the world. If you can speak some good English, it's very useful. Even if you go back to China, you can teach people, and it's lucrative as well. If you want to teach English in China, good job, good money. If you come to Australia and not learn much English, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because that means when you want to do something in English, you'll find yourself being very restricted in a way. And I think it's good to learn English. And you can retain your own culture, you can retain your own customs, no problem. But yeah, learn new things is...